Check, test, 1, 2. Okay, it looks like everything's working. Check, test. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Another Tuesday is upon us, and it's time to chat. If you have an RV-related question, of course, you can put it over in the chat window, and we'll answer that as soon as we possibly can. Then I'll get a little update going, and we're going to talk a little bit about current events. Now, I'll say this right up front. I generally avoid discussing any current event just because, everybody has their take on it. And so I think that I'm going to chat a little bit about gas and gas prices. Maybe not so much about prices, but, we're all facing that. But about gas in general. And I know here it's up 65 cents in the last week. Diesel hit $4.79 today, at least at a couple of stations I saw. And I know, we've all seen the crazy California prices, but they have, hella gas taxes, right? I don't know what their gas tax is, but it's huge. When everybody else has got $3 gas, they're at $4.50. So the question I have is, does everybody remember, say, 3-4 years ago, maybe, or so, at the height of the fracking boom? And then all of a sudden, these fracked wells cost a lot of money. They cost a lot to operate. The oil companies weren't getting whatever it was, $80, $100 a barrel to be able to make these fracked wells pay. So they shut them all down because we had such an excess of oil, U.S. oil, domestic oil. At that point in time, they were bragging about how the U.S. could provide all its own oil with this new fracking technology and all this. Well, what happened to all that oil? Why don't they just go turn those wells back on? Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I don't know what it takes to restart those wells. But you can't tell me that an oil company is going to go out and invest millions and millions of dollars in a well and then shut it down without the ability to restart it. And so I think a lot of this has to do with, obviously Ukraine and us embargoing Russian oil, 500,000 barrels a day. But that's all. Those are all terrible, terrible things. And it's just horrible. Any kind of war, any kind of civilians being killed for any reason whatsoever is just unacceptable. You would think that we've been on this earth long enough and working together as that we could live in peace. I don't quite understand it, but that's going to be the end of the discussion around gas prices. And gas is just, somebody answer why we had all this extra oil 4 years ago and now we're hurting for it. And I realize there's some lag, right? They're not going to be able to go turn these wells right back on. But we're not going to be out of this for a while, folks, right? We're probably looking at high gas prices for a while now. And in 2000, after the dot-com bomb crash of around 2011 or 12, right in there, I remember that diesel got up pretty high. At the time, I had a diesel pickup, I had a diesel VW Jetta, and I had a diesel motorhome. And so, I was totally dependent upon diesel. And here in the West, at least where it gets cold, they have to treat the diesel to keep it from gelling. And so that adds, 20 cents, 15 to 20 cents a gallon when they treat the diesel. What they do is they boost the cetane. Cetane in diesel is like octane in gasoline. And when you look at the octane measurement, what that is it has to do with knocking. pre-detonation. Okay, let's learn a little science here about gasoline. Is when they boost the octane, what they're trying to do is prevent pre-detonation. So when a cylinder, when a gas engine gets really, really hot, and you introduce the gases to the cylinder, and they start to compress, if it's hot enough, they'll explode prematurely. In other words, they'll fire off prematurely before the spark plug ever fires, and that's called knocking. Okay, and so to stop knocking, they increase the octane rating of the gasoline. In diesel, what cetane does is it keeps the ignition point at a certain level. Diesels don't have spark plugs. They work completely off compression. And so when you compress the diesel air mixture, it explodes when you get to a certain point. And, that makes power. And so cetane it keeps that explosion point at a certain level, and then also helps keep the fuel from gelling. If you don't live in a cold climate, you may not know that diesel will turn into jello at 20, 15 degrees, depending upon how much cetane there is in the diesel. So, yeah, we always deal with a big jump in, usually right around the middle of October. They'll start treating the diesel and, bringing the cetane level up to keep it from gelling. So, yeah, it's a terrible situation. In 2013, I drove across the country three and a half times with $4 plus a gallon diesel. Idaho to Virginia, Virginia to San Diego, San Diego to Denver to Virginia, then back to San Diego. All those trips across, of course, stopping in Arkansas at my folks' house. And yeah, when you'd start dropping $600-700 worth of diesel in your tank, it makes you stand up and pay attention for sure. So I want to know what your tricks are to how you save fuel. Now, one of the first things you can do is put your RV on a diet. In other words, discharge anything you haven't used for 2 years. If you watched my video on spring maintenance, you heard me say that. If you've been packing something around for 2 years, unless it's like a safety emergency type of thing, okay? We're not talking, well, to a certain extent, wrenches and things like that, but there's a certain number of things you just have to carry in the sense that you need them. But if you got footballs and baseballs and basketballs and soccer balls and all this other crap that weighs, and every bit of that weight takes money in fuel to push down or pull down the road. And so go on a diet. I know a lot of people, and I'll probably do this year, is until gas prices come back down a little bit, I probably won't take big long trips. They'll be 100 miles out and back instead of 200 miles out and back. Because we're not going to get out of this anytime soon, But I'm going to go over to the comments and see who's in tonight. I kind of got off on a tangent there, and like I say, I normally try to avoid political discussions. My politics are mine and yours are yours, and let's just keep it that way. That'll keep us friends. It used to be the old saying, when you go to Christmas dinner or to Thanksgiving dinner, you don't talk about politics, religion. What's the other one? I don't know. There was always 3 that you didn't talk about. So who's in tonight? Tom Downey's in. Good to have you in, Tom. And Tim is in. Yeah, crazy diesel prices for sure, Tim. Tim mentioned that it's going to hit the airlines, and the airlines, they buy fuel way out in advance. They're 6 months into the futures when they're buying fuel, so it'll hit them for sure. So I'm going to have to digress for a minute. How is it that today they announced the Russian oil embargo and gas prices jumped, 60 cents in a day? Who's making the money here? The fuel in those tanks at the gas station costs the same amount today as it did yesterday. But yet now they're making 60 cents a gallon more on it. You think they're going to give us that 60 cents back as we go down the road? You're crazy. Okay, I got to get off that because you're going to get me wound up. And then we'll never answer any good questions. So, sorry. Let's see. I guess Rich is in Germany, as everybody knows. He says it's going through the roof there. Well, you were already paying around $7 to the U.S. gallon, weren't you? You have to buy it in liters. But I thought Germany and England and most of those places were around $7 to get started on gasoline. Vince and RV Life, great to have you in, Vince. Yeah, from Panama City Beach. Judy's in from Alabama. Great to have you here, Judy. So happy to have you along. Tom, many of those wells are on government land and can't. I don't believe that, Tom. Sorry, I don't. That's why I don't like to get into political discussions. We'll just skip that. I don't believe that's true. And even if they are, they've got long-term leases. Greg Graybird, great to have you in. Hey, there's a good strategy Greg Graybird has. He says, you could put a raw egg between your foot and the gas pedal. Sorry, I have to lean over because of, you know what? Let me do one thing here. Sorry. The way I have the camera set up, it blocks the chat window. And then I have to do all this, ranking around to try to see who's saying what. So, Mary Stenkowitz. Hi, Mary. It's so nice to have you here. Yes, it's been a while, but we're so happy that you could make it. Been on incognito due to health issues with the family. Boy, I sure hope that's worked out, and it's going better for you. Happy to be back and anxious to get on the road again in May. Yeah, be well. You too, Mary, and your family. I hope they are improving. Tom says fuel is injected until the ignition point. Timing is done in the injection pump, not compression point. In modern diesels, that's true. However, that doesn't prevent them from pre-firing. Free enterprise system. Yeah, that's for sure. Tim Meyer says free enterprise system. Hey, KX Racers in. So nice to have you here, dude. Hey, I watched you steam clean that oven the other day, and man, that thing sure turned out nice. From where it started. Sure looked good. Gary D says he's lucky he lives in Arizona in the valley. Not too cold for the home base. We picked an area we can get to doctor stores on a golf cart. I have 300-watt solar panel on it, never had to plug it in. That's cool. Yeah, that's really cool, Gary. Live in Arizona in the valley. You mean around Phoenix? Because, it's back to snowing and cold here. And I'm seriously thinking about getting out of here, selling and moving to Arizona. I should have stayed there, I guess, but oh well, I got family and friends here. But the thought crossed my mind a couple times over the last day or so. Tom Downey says gas price is a scam. Yeah, I think so to a certain point. It's just greed. And greed. Greg Graybird says they went 55 mile an hour during the oil embargo years. Now Idaho has 80 mile an hour speed limit. For how long? Yeah, I think, I don't know, the gas embargo of the 70s and the 55 mile an hour speed limits and all that stuff. I just don't see that happening in today's environment. I mean, for crying out loud, people are crying because they got to wear a cotton picking mask. We're going to ask them to drive 55. Christ, they don't drive. Oh, sorry. They don't drive the speed limit now. I mean, I drove over to Twin Falls, which is about 100 miles west of here, to see a friend of mine whose mom is ill, and he happened to be there. He's You know, he grew up in Twin, but he lives up in northern Idaho now. And so I went over to visit him. And I was driving 80, and people were passing me like I was on jacks. And yeah, by the way, the gas mileage in my little Subaru at 80 mile an hour drops down to about 25. So I slowed down, but yeah, we have 80 mile an hour speed limits in Idaho and in Utah through the length of, almost the full length of Utah, at least until you get to the south of Provo there, maybe 15 minutes. And then it's 65 on up to Tremont, and then it's 80 on into Idaho. So, and then in Idaho, yeah, the interstate, except around towns, and over to Boise Valley is all 80. So, oh, thank you, Mary Stankiewicz, for that super chat. I greatly appreciate that. Every little bit helps. Oh, you're in Sun City, Gary. Oh, my aunt and uncle were in south of Casa Grande, southwest. It'll come to me in a minute. I want to say Arizona City, but that wasn't it. But it was close. But they were there for a number of years. But yeah, Sun City, that's a cool little area in there. And yeah, being able to get around on a golf cart, that's awesome. Are you there in the summers too? Or are you just in there? Are you snowbirding down there in the winters, Gare? Food Porn Chef says he's still in Holtville, Cali. At Hot Springs, gas is $6. Yeah. I saw on the national news that gas was $6. You know, what are we going to do? Okay, so Tom says he's in Whidbey Island. Him and Gray Graybird are both at Whidbey. But he says, beautiful day there, 50 degrees and clear. Yeah, we've got this Canadian low that's slipped into Idaho. I wonder, does everybody know George Carlin and the Hippy Dippy Weatherman? Weird Al, the Hippy Dippy Weatherman. I better not do that one. That one might be too off color for this channel. But if you don't, go Google it on YouTube. Weird Al and the Hippy Dippy Weatherman. From George Carlin. KX Racer asks, have I done any more work on my camper? Yes, I just haven't put a video out because it's been really boring stuff. I got some footage, and I might get a video put together. I actually have a video coming out this week, but it's me installing my whole home humidifier on my furnace, and that's helped a lot. But it got cold again, and it dried right back out. And I think I'm such a deficit that everything in your house sucks up moisture. The walls, the floors. I've got hardwood floors, and I could tell they were getting dry. And I'm dry. I could tell they were getting dry because they were getting squeaky, cracking and creaking a lot when you walked on them. And so I just think that it's going to take some time. And then with this cold weather, cold air will suck the humidity right out of your house. So what I have done though, KX, is I've got I took all my windows out and I've got them all cleaned up. I've got some replacement gaskets coming for them, seals. I hope they're the right ones. I only bought just enough to do one window because I didn't want to buy 100 feet of it. Sorry. I didn't want to buy 100 feet of it and then find out it was the wrong stuff and not be able to return it. So I plan on redoing the gaskets, the seals, if you will, in all the windows. But I've got them all cleaned up, and I did some wet sanding on a couple of them. I'm going to repaint them all. So I'll get out and do some more wet sanding. Let's see, I've finished the other acrylic window, so the two corner bubble windows, I've got those all polished out now. And I'm really just kind of waiting for the weather to improve. If I could get my camper in the garage like you can, that'd be a different story. I would be able to work on it, but it's just ever so slightly too tall. I only have a 7-foot tall garage door, And by the time I put it on something to roll it in and out of the garage, what I was thinking about getting is some of those furniture moving dollies like you get from Home Depot, or not Home Depot, Harbor Freight. They're fairly inexpensive. Excuse me, folks. Say it is. We're back to 10% humidity. It's super dry in here. Just a minute. I got to clear my throat. All right. So yeah, I just can't. It took it so high that I couldn't. I did the math and I just can't get it in the garage. The damn door is not quite tall enough. If the door was 6 inches taller, I'd be in Fat City. But so I'm just stuck with it. It has, it's sitting out back here, covered up with the tarp, waiting for spring. Mary Stankiewicz says next year they will be out west. Had to cancel this year's trip. Sorry. We'll look for you. Headed towards sun in Seattle. Well, depending upon the route you take, I'm sort of on the way. I'm at the intersection of I-15 and I-86 in Pocatello. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to have you guys stop. You could spend the night at the fairgrounds up here. It's really nice. I used to stay up there myself when I would be in Pocatello. I would stay 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. Well, not generally in a run, because what I would do is I would come here and I would use this as a jump off point, and then I would go north to dry camping, and then I would come back here, and oftentimes there would be events going on, or come back here for the 4th of July or something like that, and then run up to another spot and then come back, and then usually stop here as my last stop on the way south for winter. Okay, so let's see, where was I? George is dead. Tom Downey. Gary D. He says he full-time in Arizona, still trying out from living in the Northwest. LOL. If it isn't too bad if you figure it out to keep cool in the summer. Yeah, if you figure out how to keep cool in the summer. Yeah, I was there on the fringe a couple times. I was there in early October one year in Tucson. And then, of course, you've heard me complain and cry about having to stay there till the end of May, in 2020, the first year of coronavirus. And, I didn't get the super hot months, but I've dealt with 100-degree temps in the RV. It's not fun. It can be done. Like you say, there's strategies that you can apply. In fact, I actually have a video. It's all produced and ready to go. It just didn't make sense to release it in the middle of winter. You don't release a video in the middle of winter on tips on how to stay cool in a hot summer. So it's sitting out there just waiting for me to, polish it up and push it out. And I'll probably do that sometime, midsummer. I've got 5 or 6 other videos that, I'm just waiting for an appropriate time to release. By the way, nobody's mentioned yet, but I got a haircut. I got them all cut, as a matter of fact. Not just but I got them all cut. And then instantly had to come home and trim up my beard. They, screwed it up again. I won't be going back there. Mary asks, would I recommend selling my RV on my own versus a trade? I know more dollars is up to the dealer, but I thought I'd get more on my own. Yes, you may. Plus, well, here's what I would do, is I would go to a dealer and have it appraised and say, okay, I'm thinking about maybe trading this in. I don't know if I can make it work. What do you think it's worth? And have them tell you what they think it's worth. And then sit down and have a discussion with yourself and say, okay, would it be easier for me to give it to the dealer, let them deal with it, or sell it outright myself? Now, I don't think it's terribly hard to sell RVs right now. I think the market's improving. But, Rich, you got a killer deal. I was just looking the other day, and this is always a bad thing, but our same coach just sold for $100,000. the same setup, the cat, the whole 9 yards. So you got a screaming deal. But you can't. I don't look back like that. What took me out there is I was looking for a different listing for a friend of mine, and I ran across one of a 4010, same year, 2004, same paint scheme and everything. So, to finish up that thought, if you think you could sell it for more yourself than you could get from the dealer, then I would go for it. I would try to sell it myself and give yourself a time frame. Let's say I'm going to try to sell this myself for 2 or 3 weeks, months, whatever time frame works best for you. And at the end of that, if you haven't sold it, then go trade it in. But yeah, I think you would get more cash up front by selling it yourself, especially in today's market with the way RVs are selling right now. The market's quite inflated, as is everything else. And so that's probably how I would do it, is I would try to sell it myself, give myself a time frame, a couple months, whatever it might be. And then if you haven't sold it, then maybe go look at trading it in. So I think that's probably a pretty sound strategy. Greg Graybird says, old joke. Folks from West Washington coast move inland, suffer drying and cracking of webbed feet. Yeah, you don't see it, but I've always got a bottle of lotion nearby because my hands are always so dry here in the rain shadow of the Cascades, basically. Okay, so let's see. KX Racer says he has his camper on 8 of those Harbor Freight dollies that are rated at 1,000 pounds. Yeah, I thought they'd probably work perfectly. Give you a chance to be able to roll them around. The other problem I have is that my driveway is stamped. Okay, so it's stamped in a herringbone. Well, is it a herringbone or a running bond, or I don't know, but anyway, my driveway's stamped, and so it's got these ruts in it. And it looked like, well, I would have had to put, like a sheet of plywood or maybe, hardboard, 1/4-inch hardboard or something like that on the concrete, because there'd be no way I'd be able to roll a 2,500-pound camper out of that garage up onto that driveway with those, with that pattern stamped in it. So I would dearly love to replace that driveway. It's all spalled up, and but that might have to wait. Yeah, that's a good point. Bob Woodward's responding back to Mary, and he says, Mary, a dealer has to buy it so they can make a profit reselling it. Sell it yourself, yeah, and put their profit in your pocket. Tom says he hopes Mary stops by. Yeah, Whidbey's not too far from Seattle. You guys might be able to all connect up there somewhere. Gary D. He's got an AC swamp cooler, mini split, and 10,000 watts of solar to power it. Well, that should probably handle it. 10,000 watts of solar. Wow, that's pretty cool. I imagine you can get by with the swamp cooler a lot. That's the beauty of swamp coolers, is that in really dry climates, like in the desert Southwest around Phoenix, or even here in Idaho, where it's dry, or eastern Oregon, Southern California, swamp coolers can be very effective in dry climates. And mini splits are one of the most efficient air conditioning systems you can have, as far as standard, or as far as air conditioners go, not swamp coolers. Tom Downey is bragging that Whidbey equals the best weather. Yeah, it's like we were talking last week. You got that whole Pacific Ocean out there to moderate your weather. You get a lot more rain, but you don't see the temperature extremes that we see inland. Mary Stankiewicz says they're buying a bigger rig, more dollars, of course. Where or how do I sell it? Okay, I would start with Craigslist, and you might put a Facebook Marketplace. So I would start every place it's free. Okay, so that would be Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, any other free ads there might be in your area, because oftentimes, there might be, we out here in the West we have Thrifty Nickel, which is just like a, well, it used to be the want ads, but it was just the want ads, and now it's down to like 6 or 8 pages, but it's still want ads. But they have RV listings in those. Those cost a little more. I think a placement on RV Trader is about $35. Okay, give or take a couple bucks. And then RV Trader is nationwide, but I sold my aunt and uncle's Ventana on Marketplace, on Facebook Marketplace, last fall. And then, of course, Rusty was sold to Rich, who watched the YouTube channel. And so I had it on Facebook Marketplace, and I had gotten some inquiries from Marketplace. And then I noticed, I was scanning the comments, and thanks for reminding me, Tim, you are correct. Craigslist is $5 now for an RV listing, but it's $5, so it's cheap. It might have gone up, but it wasn't expensive. So that's where I would start. I would start with the cheap listings, run a couple weeks. If you're not getting enough response, then move to like RV Trader, rvtrader.com, Mary. Oh, look at that. So there's Bob Woodward, Woodard, as says, Mary, feel free to call me. Mary, if you'd like to speak to him, and we don't like to put phone numbers on Facebook, so here's what we will do. Mary, I have your email address. Bob, if you will email me, trbolin@gmail.com, send your phone number, I'll forward it over to Mary. And that way it doesn't go on public forum like Facebook here. And I'm sure she'd love to talk to you, because any kind of recommendations, I'm sure that they would be very welcome. And that's why we're here. I love bringing this community together and having people help other people out. Which, by the way, reminds me, if you're here to chat, that's great. If you would like to ask a question, I'll try to answer it for you. Throw it over there in the chat window, or you can email me at trbolin.com. trbolin@gmail.com. I also have my own domain. Go over and check out my website at trbolin.com. Now, is everybody confused? Because I know I am. Let's see, what else? Give me that thumbs up if you like the video. If you're not subscribed, do subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can go to my Amazon store. There's a link in the description for the video. If you click through the Amazon store link, you don't have to buy stuff off of my store. Just if you're going to go to Amazon and purchase something, if you click through my channel, I'll get credit for whatever you buy that day. It's all anonymous. I don't know who buys what. I just see that somebody bought a book, or they bought some borax, or some, whatever the stuff is. And it just all helps. Because, I think I mentioned, if you've been following along from the beginning, this is the first year in 4 years, 5 years technically. I'm starting my 5th year right now of doing YouTube, and this is the first year I made money, and I made $73. Every time you buy cameras and you buy software and you pay for bandwidth and you do all those things that are associated with the channel, it eats up a lot of money, and cameras and that sort of stuff. Oh, which, by the way, if you follow along, this is my little DJI Pocket Osmo Pro. That was stolen last fall out of my car, and it was recovered. The local constable police called me and said, you reported this serial number, blah, 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 was stolen, and we have it here. And so I went down and showed them proof that it, of the serial number and stuff, and they returned it to me. However, I didn't get back the $600 microphone set yet. Nor I would. The bag was very valuable to me, right? And the other stuff, there were batteries and there was a bunch of stuff in it. So I called the insurance company because I don't want to have any trouble with the insurance company, And I explained to this gal that I got this camera back and blah 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 blah, and she just said, "Forget about it. It's more hassle than it's worth." So I hope she wasn't lying. But I got my camera back, and it still works. Okay. Okay, Bob and Mary. If Bob emails me Mary, I will forward his number. Craigslist, first run it for 2 weeks, see what happens. Good point, Tom. Yeah, that's a good idea. Great idea. It's new to me, and we only used it 3 times. Yeah, so it should sell nicely. I don't think you would have a problem selling it. It sounds like from the pictures you sent, it looked really nice inside. That's the one you're selling. Greg Rayberg, move camper same way I move tons of cast iron printing machinery. Yeah, planks, pipes, and come along. So that's what you did, Gray? Did you do the post-register press when they replaced it in Idaho Falls? ? The reason I ask is I worked on that. I was working as a laborer, and I worked for like 3 weeks when they replaced the press at the post-register. And man, did I go home dirty. That ink was everywhere. Anyway, fun little sidetrack there. Mary Stankiewicz says, never heard of a swamp cooler. Good to know. Yeah, what a swamp cooler, all it is, Mary, is that it's a box with a pad, usually a pad that's of an absorbent nature. So there'll be like straw, or there'll be woven almost bamboo like wood. I forget what that's called, but you get them wet and you draw air across them, and the evaporation cools the air, and so you get cool air off of them. And they use a lot less electricity than a normal AC would. Like probably a third, or maybe even less than a third. But yeah, moving it on iron pipes would be a good idea, Gray. But yeah, it was such a hassle. And then once I got it in the garage, I'd only have like 6 inches above it to work on it. Maybe 10. So I just decided I'll just wait. Roundtown Scouter, hey, great to have you in. Are you still in Carlsbad? Gary D, a dew point meter helps. Part number read 8706. Yeah, I'll bet it does, Gary. Kex Racer, he says, I'm assuming that swamp coolers do not work in the Northeast because I've never heard of them or seen anyone use one around here. Yeah, you have to be in a dry environment. You have to be in a very dry environment for them to work. So yeah, in Pennsylvania where you're at, up in the Poconos, you wouldn't know about them. In fact, the Northeast, you're not going to see them. You're not going to see them. You might see, I don't even think you would see them in Florida, Alabama, anywhere where the humidity's high. But you get into the West out here where it's really dry, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Cali, Idaho, Utah, Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington. They're pretty popular because they work really well, and they are a lot less expensive to run than a traditional compressor style air conditioner. So yeah. Tim Meyer says he sold his Fleetwood Storm through RV Trader. Yeah, I had a listing all ready to go for Rusty, the RV, for RV Trader. But frankly, Richard was so Johnny on the spot. It wasn't even 48 hours before we had a deal put together. From the time I ran the video on YouTube till the time we had a deal inked. So, Greg Raybert says swamp coolers depend on low humidity to work. Yes, they do. They depend on evaporation. And we'll talk a little science here. I mean, we got a minute. If you're trying to evaporate water, always keep in mind that, wet goes to dry. Okay? It's called osmotic potential if you want to know the technical terms of it. But the general idea is that it's almost like heat going to cold, except, moist air will be drawn towards dry or cold air. You might remember when I mentioned, because it's cold here right now, the humidity outside has dropped considerably, and it's really sucked the humidity down in the house. And that's because the warm, moist air in the house wants to escape outside, and that helps suck down the humidity. But it's the evaporation. When you evaporate water, or when you evaporate anything, but especially water like we're talking about with swamp coolers, then when that water evaporates, it removes heat from the air, and that cools the air, so you get nice cool air from a swamp cooler. But it will be humid air. And that's why Bob was mentioning that. Was it Bob? Or Gary, sorry. Why Gary says it's good to have a dew point meter or a hygrometer. Hygrometer? No, humidistat. Yeah, one of those two. Hygrometer? No, hygrometer. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting out of my area of expertise. Tom Downey says, "Tell us what a rain shadow is. That is where all the storms go around because the mountains get moved around." No. A rain shadow is the result of something called adiabatic heating and cooling. So, you think about the Cascade Mountains. As the warm Pacific air laden with moisture comes inland, as it rises, it cools. Okay? As it cools, it can't hold as much moisture. And so it rains on what they call the windward side of the mountain range. So that's why the Cascades and the Sierras in California, and then the Cascades as you go through Oregon and Washington, are snowy, rainy on the west, but on the east side of those mountains, they're dry. Because what happens is most of the moisture gets wrung out of those clouds. As the air rises, it gets colder and colder. It can hold less moisture, so it rains out or snows. When it comes over the mountains, then it begins to fall again. As it falls, or as the air falls, it warms and it's dry, so it can literally suck the moisture out of the air, out of the environment, and it causes something they call a rain shadow. And so the air moving over the mountains on the windward side cools, loses its moisture, comes over the top of the mountain, falls down again. As it falls, it warms up, and it literally sucks up moisture because it gets warm. It can hold more moisture. And so, yeah, that's why you see that, the east of the Sierras, east of the Cascades, is really dry and desert. And the further away from them, the worse it gets. So you think about where Nevada is, how far away it is, at least northern Nevada from the Cascades and the Sierras. And the same with eastern Oregon and eastern Washington. Those are high arid areas, high desert kind of arid areas, at least part of eastern Washington. So that's what they call a rain shadow. Mary, if I get Bob's number, I will forward it to you, and then you guys can connect. That would be awesome. Thanks for the reminder, Rich. Yeah, those thumbs up are always appreciated. Posted your number. You did get Bob, I don't see it. Tim Myers, clear as mud. Gary D, nicely stated. Thank you. Eric Myers, Atwood 10-gallon water heater has no anode. Should I put one in? Yes, if it has the port for it. I'm assuming there's a drain in it. And yeah, just pull the drain plug out and get yourself a 10-gallon anode for an Atwood and put one in. I bet it had one. It's probably just gone. It probably just got eaten away. They will do that. And yeah, you do want one in there, Eric, for sure. Oh, Tim says he doesn't think Atwoods have an anode rod in the tank, is aluminum. Anode rods are for domestic, they have steel tanks. And I think I'm right about that. Well, you might be. I changed to tankless water heater, a long time ago. And so I haven't had to deal with an anode. And I had an old Atwood. I don't believe it had an aluminum tank in it because it had an anode. I know it did because I would pull it out every winter when I winterized it to drain the water heater. But you may be true. That may be right, Tim. But I know I've seen anodes for some Atwood models, and you may be right that maybe some of the Atwoods do have aluminum tanks. Bob Woodard says, I hope it didn't throw you under the next tax bracket. No, it didn't. Not even close. In fact, if this inflation doesn't settle down, I'm going to have to go back to work. That's a 4-letter word, isn't it? Either that or I might have to put more effort into this YouTube thing. Oh, Roundtown Scouter says, yes, Carlbad this week, San Antonio next week. That's a good trade. Tom Downey, swamp coolers require a lot of water. His aunt was always about the water bill. Yeah, they do require a lot of water. Fortunately, in the West, although we don't have a lot of rain and we've got less and less water every day. Yeah, it's a trade-off. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I guess what you save in electric bills, you pay in a water bill. They lived in Desert Hot Springs. Yeah, that's a really hot, dry place for sure, and that would work. TR, the science guy. Thanks, Mayor. Tim Myers, believe it or not, we used to sell swamp coolers to local dry cleaners in Cincinnati. I always question their effectiveness. Huh. Interesting. I wonder why they would buy them. They must have done something. Tim Meyer says, sling psychrometer comes to mind. Now, I am showing my age. So I'll show you how nerdy I am, and I'll bring my sling psychrometer to this stream next week. I actually have one. I picked it up at a garage sale many, many years ago. I've still been packing it around for years. But yeah, I have a sling psychrometer. And for those of you that don't know what that is, if you've ever seen them on the, in the old days doing weather and to take the humidity, there was this device that had two thermometers in it. One of the bulbs was wet and one of them was dry. And you'd swing it around for 15 or 20 seconds and then measure the difference in the temperatures, and that would tell you the humidity. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty good technology. Greg Graybert says, the rain shadow on Whidbey Island result in 17 inches of rain a year, but in the form of drizzle 200 days a year. Vancouver is the same area. Yeah, pretty much. Whidbey is in the Olympics rain shadow downwind of Sequim. Yes. Tom Downey says, what I'm describing happens to east of them. The shadow occurs because of the mountains. Absolutely correct. Oh, Mary Stankiewicz, she says, I have a different knowledge of science. Ask me most anything with nursing and the human anatomy. My mom was a nurse. Yep. For sure. And as a biologist, used to hang around with a bunch of people that played with bodies. The pre-med school was Idaho State, and they had, they would do cadaver labs and that kind of stuff, and I would, slip in every once in a while and check out the cadavers. That wasn't my cup of tea, though. Gary D says, in today's world, you really need to think about how you manage your life, food, fuel, power, water. Yeah, for sure. I thought we're just about done. I think I'm going to wax poetically for a few minutes here. I was thinking just the other day about getting older. Standing there, I'd given up counting gray hairs many years ago. And I remember a discussion I had. I was talking to a lifelong friend of mine, like since grade school, like first or second grade. And we must have been 6 or 7 years old. And I remember, how certain things you just, like when, for those that were old enough, I don't remember this because I wasn't quite old enough, but when Kennedy was shot, or when man landed on the moon, or where you were with 9/11, and all those sorts of things. Well, and then there's other things that happen in your life that you remember. And I remember one time talking to a friend of mine, and I said, we were talking about the year 2000, because it must have been something we were talking about in school. This had been about 68, 69, somewhere in there. And how I said, oh my God, that is so far away. And now I was sitting here the other day thinking, that was 22 years ago. But Gary, you're absolutely right, man. You really got to watch it. I mean, with things like coronavirus and inflation and all that, to be honest with you, if I really wanted to earn some money, I could put more effort into the YouTube channel and do a lot more with it. So, I don't want to go to work because I want to be footloose and fancy free and be able to load up the truck camper and take off when I want to. Is that selfish? Yeah, probably. But that is the way it is. Okay, so let's see. Gray Bird has got a question for Mary. Nursing in the Human Anatomy question. He says, Mary, what causes old men to get grumpy? I could tell you, but this is a family channel, Gray. Tom says, yeah, most of our rain comes from the south of us, and he says, I'm just a pup. He's 81. Yeah, I'm 62. Well, I'll be 62 this year. Oh, Tim Myers' wife is a neonatal intensive care unit nurse. That's cool. Man, as long as we're just chatting, the advances they've made in that neonatal care are amazing. They can take 10, 12, 15, 18-week preemies, and they're living a normal life when they're 3 or 4 years old. That's just amazing to me. Mary says, it's just like us old ladies. We tolerate so much less than years gone by, and hormones. That's hilarious. KX Racer asks, is there any fuel efficiency modifications that actually improve fuel mileage with diesel pushers, huge walls going down the road? I can tell you the biggest one that you can do. Slow the hell down. It makes me laugh. My rule of thumb was I would drive 5 to 10 below posted. All right? Because I am not in a hurry. And I can't tell you how often I would get my doors blown off by some, 43-foot Class A with a 20-foot enclosed dual deck toy hauler getting 4 miles a gallon, driving 85 miles an hour. And, Gray mentioned it, and, we chatted about it a bit. You're a little young there to probably remember the fuel problems we had in the 70s. I remember the first time we paid $1 for gas, $1 a gallon. So yeah, slow down is probably the biggest thing. And lose some weight. Like I said, go through and get rid of stuff that you don't use. If you're packing around, 6 lawn chairs and you only ever use 2 or 4, leave 2 home. There's 15, 20 pounds, and all that weight adds up into fuel. I'd be glad to know, I would like to know, anybody else's fuel saving tricks. Gary Gee says, we don't know it all, so we get a few new friends. Yeah, for sure. Tim Meyer says, I get less patient as I get older. Now get off my lawn. I'm a really super patient kind of guy most of the time. Pretty laid back. But you can push me to the point where you're going to get bit. I do have a bit of a bite still. But not very often anymore. I try not to let things bother me too much. Graybird answers KX Racer. Oh, wait, I jumped over. Mary Stankiewicz, yeah, neurointensive care, yes. 750-gram babies are surviving these days. Yeah, it's strictly amazing, strictly amazing. 750 grams, what is that? A pound and change? Just a little bit more than a pound? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, wow. Anyway, it blows me away. Okay, so Graybird answers back. For big square rig, best effect is to reduce speed, calculate the square law of resistance. Yeah, just slow down. Tom Downey says his kid was born at 2 pounds in 1970. Thank God for nurses. Yeah, for sure. Because 2 pounds, that was probably nip and tuck for quite a while back then, Tom. Tim Myers is commenting and confirming, yeah, 10-4 on slowing down. Why is everybody in such a hurry? His sweet spot is 62 to 63. Yeah, I generally actually would drive with the tach more than I drove with the speedometer. And this is going to be one of the lessons I'd give Richard. I'd set the tach 1800, and that I would drive with the tach. Now, on my cat engine, the 330, the 3126, the 330 horsepower, if you look at the torque and the horsepower curves, the sweet spot is 1800 RPMs, and that's typically where I would run. Sometimes 2000, but I would run 1800, and depending upon the headwind and those, all these other factors, I would be somewhere between 62 and 67 miles an hour. And yeah, 1800 RPMs, I would just set the cruise at 1800 RPMs and go. Tom Downey says he pimped gas at 8 cents in 1958. Tom, yeah, I should have been thinking about this. I'm going to spend just a minute here and be distracted. I might be able to dig this picture up real quick. And you guys might get a kick out of it. My grandfather ran a Chevron service station for almost 50 years in St. Anthony, Idaho. And no, that's not it. That's not it. I'm looking for an old picture. Let's see. it's not going to show up here, of course. And as soon as I hang up tonight, it'll pop up. But I have a picture of me at a very young age. Oh, wait, there's one more spot that I could look here real quick. Let's see if it's over here. Nope. Nah, that's too bad because it's pretty fun. Pretty fun picture of me from a few years back. Okay, but I remember that I had, well, we used to call them mini bikes. And really what it was is it had a little 3-horse gas engine on it, mini bike, and you could ride that thing all day for a dime. And this is back in the 70s. On a dime's worth of gas. And that was probably when gas was probably in the 29 cents a gallon, something like that. Gary D says his was at 10 cents in the 70s. Yeah, for sure. Richard Kirby, leave the wife home. Yeah, I'll leave that one to you, Rich. Kex Racer says, what is my estimate MPG difference with my old camper going, say, 70 versus 55? I would get probably at least 10% better gas mileage. Over the life of my RV, over the entire time I drove it, my average MPG was 8.2 miles to gallon. I saw it as high as 10 and as low as 5. The 5 miles to the gallon was driving from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Salt Lake City, actually not even Salt Lake, to Ogden, bucking a 40-45 mile an hour headwind all the way, and I literally could watch the gas gauge fall, and I got 5 miles to gallon on that. Driving across I-40 from Tennessee to Arizona, I got 10.3 on a segment from Oklahoma City to Kingman. Now my coach weighed roughly 32,000, and my overall tow weight was about 35,000. Sorry, folks, I got to get rid of Mr. Spammer here. Mr. Daniel Kettler is going to go to YouTube hell here as soon as I can get this to stay up long enough for me to do this. Spammer, goodbye. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, oh hey Ron Bunch. Hi Ron, so nice to have you guys here. How's Terry? Hope you guys are well. He says, thinking with fuel going up, many just won't travel this summer. Yeah, that might open up more campsites, and going to Alaska might not be as crowded. Yeah, that's true. You'll probably see some hella high fuel prices in Alaska. Now, I might be wrong, and let's hope that I am. And this all goes away. You know, all these old fracked oil wells come online automatically, you know, because the oil companies don't want to screw us. I guess I'm being really naive here. Because, you know, oil companies and telephone companies are, you know, some of the most hated, entities in the world or in life, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But, yeah, I think that we're into this. Wanda Rutledge. Hi, Wanda. She says, yes, that is true. I have a granddaughter 3 months early, 1 pound and 6 ounces, and now she will be 10 years old, have some learning troubles, but that's thanks to the nurses. Yeah, and thinks that she lived, for sure. Yep, for sure. That's cool, Wanda. Greg Graybird reports back about his truck. His old Chevy. He says he usually drives 55 to 60. and they get 12. At 70, they get 9 to 10. Oh, and Tom's replying back about his child they didn't hold for 90 days. Yeah, Wanda, we got you. Yeah, Wanda Rutledge said she meant to say that thanks to the nurses she's alive today, yeah. Mary Stankiewicz says she was born in 58. Oh, boy. Tim Myers, I was 2. Greg Graybird, Mary, 1958 year I graduated high school. Mary, her daughter works at CCF with the babies. Awesome. Such challenges at the hands of mother's choices mostly. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Rich Kirby, Tim warning Richard. Well, Tim, you got to keep in mind that it's probably 4 coming up on 5 a.m. in Germany, and so I imagine Mrs. Kirby is probably well asleep. Tom Downey, Gas Wars. He worked at the largest station 5 miles from the GW Bridge. Yeah. Tom Downey, he gets 8 to 8.5 on the Mountain Air, 60-65. Yeah, same thing here. Tom, on the old Freightliner with the cat. 8 to 8.5. Pretty consistent if you keep your foot out of it. The thing of it is, though, is you can go 80. You can, but why? What's the hurry? It's like Tim said. What the hell is the hurry? KX Racer asks, why do so many huge RVs have gas engines? Seems less common to see diesels. You know, that's a great question, KX. And it really has a lot to do with the chassis selection and the size. You're not ever going to see, well, that would be a lie, but you're rarely going to see a large gas RV, mostly because gassers don't make as much horsepower and as much torque. And in reality, when it comes to RVs, torque is the key. Okay, torque is that pulling power. Horsepower gets you off the line. Torque pulls hills. Torque climbs hills. Horsepower doesn't. And so when you start moving large loads down the road, you want more torque. And those gas RVs, those big gassers, you know, they're lucky if they get 6 miles to gallon at 65 because they just don't make as much power. You get into a lot of the Class A's will be diesel. A lot of Class C's, okay, the 34 foot and down will be gassers. But yeah, that's the diesel thing is all about power. It's about torque, and it's about having a comfortable run down the road. And nowadays, I mean, for crying out loud, these big Class A RVs, they're getting 600 horsepower engines. Okay, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. My Cat 330 makes 800 foot-pounds of torque. Now that's a lot of torque, and I can climb all day in third gear at 40 miles an hour. I imagine, Tom, you're in the same boat. My old Class A, I would just stick it in third gear, climbing a hill. I climbed El Cajon, Monarch Pass. I climbed Monarch Pass in my Class A, which is 12,000 feet in Colorado. It's on US 50 from coming out of Pueblo, going up over the Rocky Mountains, and then coming down into what's the name of that park, national monument over there? Grand Canyon? No, what is it called? Anyway, it's the big canyon over there. Gosh, I love that place. It was amazing. But I was passing the log trucks, if that says anything, just because, it's got a lot of torque. And so why they put gassers in them? Because they're cheaper. It's like buying a gas pickup versus a diesel pickup. You buy a gas RV versus a diesel RV, you're probably going to spend anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 less. Like buying a diesel pickup versus a gas pickup, the differential on a used vehicle is probably $5,000, and on a new one it's almost 10. Oh, Ron says Terry is on a flight back to Iowa for a visit. Great. Well, when he gets home, you tell him, give him my best. Eric Meyer says, you guys are getting pretty good mileage. I have the Cat 330 and only get 6.7 at 60 to 65. Yeah, you know, I brag about 8.2, but probably my average mileage, I mean, all around mileage, that's up and down and round and stop and go traffic and all that. You probably, I was probably in there around 7. You know, same with Tom, you know, we're talking about making these long runs. You know, out here in the West, we end up making a lot longer runs, you know, 300-400 miles, you know, of wide open road. I mean, you know, there might be a stop in there for the night, but when you can run 300, 400, 500, 600 plus miles at a good consistent speed with not much wind, you're gonna probably see better mileage. But yeah, that's, you know, I mean, in reality, all things being what they are, yeah, 6.7 to 7 is probably about where I would average on an average day. But yeah, I just did I did it last fall, but I just looked at my mileage over the whole life of the RV just for fun. Tim Myers is reporting 8.3 to 8.4 on his. Yeah, that sounds about right, Tim, as far as mileage goes. Gary Bird says, yeah, manufacturers charge excessive premium for diesel engines. They certainly do. Tim Myers says, fortunately, the CRV has a max of 65 miles per hour for towing. Yeah, I didn't know that they had that limit, but that makes sense. Eric Meyer says, maybe I should mention that the engine has 152,000 miles on it. Yeah, I use it. Well, that's what you bought it for, was to use it. And 152,000 on a Cat 330, that's just getting broke in. However, you might want to have your valves adjusted. Now, that's what ate my motor in 2017 when I dropped my Cat, my 330 Cat, and I broke a valve and it ate the motor. And so you might want to look at getting your valves run. When I took it into the shop and I was talking to him, I says, what the heck caused this and all this and that, you know, because it's painful. It's really expensive. They said, well, it's possible that if you had your valves run, in other words, just have the valves adjusted, that you probably wouldn't have broke a valve. So, and that might help your mileage a little bit too. So, you know, you might look at that, Eric. It's cheap insurance. It might cost you $1,500 to get the valves run and get it all tuned up again, but that's cheaper than $30,000 for a new engine. And then Tim Myers. I hadn't read your comment, Tim, but perfect answer at the right time. Tim Myers responds. Tim Myers responds to Eric. I don't think there's any relation. That he's heard that MBG on a diesel could point to needing the valve lash adjusted. Tom says his FMC coach was the exception. The GMC coach was gas. Gotcha. Gary D says, not an advertisement for Garmin, but the new RV units with a BLM land app for free or reduced cost camping really help with the camping costs. Yeah, you know, I've actually been looking at one of those, Gary. A friend of mine from Arizona I was talking to that I used to park by down at Tucson called me the other day and we were chatting, and he said they had just got one because they do a fair amount of boondocking, and so they were looking forward to trying it out. I think if I got out of the areas I'm used to, it would be really valuable. But I'll tell you right now, I know the West, and I would say everything from the Cascades east to the Wyoming, Colorado, you know, most of Utah, fair amount of Arizona, fair amount of Nevada. I know spots. I had spots I could take the Class A, and so I know I can take the truck camper. And the number of spots I can go in my truck camper is going to be greatly increased. But yeah, I'm actually got my eye on one of those, and I don't see it as an advertisement, Gary. I think that's why we're here, is to bring tips and tricks and comments to folks. uh, so that they can learn from either our mistakes or our little insider things that we've got. There we go. Yeah. So Eric says he's getting it checked service next week. He'll have it checked. Yeah. I would ask him how much it would cost to have the valves adjusted. It's not real expensive. And Tom Downey says he never shifts gears from Mount Shasta to Medford. It will shift down. Yeah. Eric Meyer says, why is it never a tailwind? A good question. Tom Downey says he tanked 5 times in 2,885 miles. That's pretty good. Ron Bunge says, it's a good time watching you interact with people as you read the questions, statements. I can tell you love the interaction, and such a kid at only 62. Yeah. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, I love this. I wish, it's great, that people interact with me. I mean, we can have fun. We stay away from controversial topics if at all possible. I mean, gas kind of is on everybody's mind right now, so we're going to talk about that. But yeah, I really do enjoy doing this. There are some nights where I kind of dread it, but yeah, it's fun. I enjoy interacting with everybody. Okay, KX Racer, good night. Great to have you here. Tom Downey says, change the injectors. That is why poor fuel mileage. It could be. And you might be able to, I'll tell you one of the things I always did, Eric, was I used this Power Service cetane booster religiously. Every other tank I would treat with the Power Service. And it's an injector cleaner. And yeah, those injectors can get expensive though. But yeah, I would religiously, first off, always buy my fuel at truck stops so you knew you were getting fresh fuel. Change your fuel filters regularly. And then I would run the Power Service in my rig every other tank. Gary says he has one. It's great. Well, that's good to know, Gary. What model was that on your Garmin? What model number is that one? Good night, Tim. Great to have you here. Yeah, Tom Downey says the injector will erode and the holes are big and the fuel gets in. Yeah, and it doesn't spray as nicely in injectors that are worn out either. And the whole thing about getting good complete combustion where you're getting high efficiency is to get that spray in there and have it atomized perfectly. So yeah, worn out injectors can be a problem. Hey, good night, Rich. We'll catch you next week. Hi, Linda. Great to have you here. We're just about to wrap it up, unfortunately. It's getting to be 8:20. She was busy making food for the fur babies. How nice. Yeah. Camp Gore 1 says, is there any other reason than a fuel pump that my Toyota won't start? Oh, yes. There are so many reasons. A fuel pump or fuel, is just one of many possibilities. It's really hard to diagnose that. I mean, the old school diagnostic way of figuring things out was, and it didn't matter what order you did these in, but you did them, is first off you made sure you had fuel by pulling the carburetor. This is back in the day when we had carburetors. You can't even do this with fuel injected equipment now. But you pull the air cleaner off and you hit the carburetor and have it pump a little fuel. And if you could see fuel gas going in the carburetor, then you had gas. Then you check spark. And what you do is pull a spark plug off, stick a screwdriver in it, hold it over close to the spark plug and have somebody crank the engine. Make sure you're using an insulated screwdriver or you're going to get the shock of your life. It might not kill you, but it'll sure get your attention. And see if you got spark. And then from there, it could be any number of things. But those are the two basic troubleshooting issues. They even make these really fancy. They're not fancy. They're really simple. Little things you put in line with spark plugs so you can see if there's spark. So in a Toyota that old, you probably have a carb. You probably could do the check for fuel. You could check for spark yourself. And if you got fuel and spark, then, it could be any number of things. The timing might be off. I mean, there's so many things. I could go into a huge list of things that it could potentially be. But, yeah. So, yeah, if you got fuel and you got spark, then it's, it could be a number of different things for sure. Wanda says, "Oh, remember them days." Tom Downey says 125,000 they're worn out. Potentially, yes. Camp Goer says they sprayed starter fluid, and I think in it so much it caught fire. Well, then you got spark. You know that. If you got fire, you got spark. So it does sound like it's probably fuel. Could be a fuel pump. Could be a fuel filter. Could be the carburetor's out of adjustment. It could be a dirty carburetor causing the float not to operate. But yeah, it's somewhere in your fuel. But yeah, it could be fuel pump. It could be something in the carburetor. It could be a fuel filter. I would recommend, on those, the fuel pump is going to be mechanical and should be pretty straightforward to change out and not real expensive. $20-25. It's not like these newer rigs that all have these electric pumps that are in the tank and they're a huge pain in the rear to fix. Hey, Sam Allen, nice to have you here. We are having an amazing evening, and unfortunately, we're just about ready to wrap things up. I'll hold here for just a minute or two if there are any other. Camp Goer one, she says they had to grab the hose. That's hilarious. I shouldn't say that. That's not funny, but it is funny. I mean, when you think about it. Some of the stuff that happens is just, it can be funny. I was just looking here real quick, waiting for any last minute RVing related questions to come in. And if I don't see any, then we'll wrap her up. I'm just looking to see if I can pop up that picture that I was thinking that everybody would get a kick out of, since it is kind of gas related. It's not going to show up right now. Like I say, as soon as I shut down, it'll come right up. But I think we're going to call it good. Good night, Mary. It's so nice to have you here. I hope you're well. I hope your family is well. And I hope we get to see you next week. Camp Goer one says, had the fuel pump changed several years ago. I would check your fuel filter. If it's set, has it been sitting a lot without running or driving with old gas in it? Gary says, Linda's, Camp Goer one says they got the flames out, had a feeling that it would catch fire. Well, like I say, if you got fire, you got spark. Good night, Wanda. Thank you so much for being here. Gary D says he has the Garmin RV 785 with the dash cam. Our friends just bought the RV 890, which is larger, same options, and love it. Okay, the Garmin RV 785. Somebody in the last 3 or 4 weeks was asking about GPSs, RV GPSs. Did I write it down who that was? I might have. This is from my desk blotter. I changed the pad. I usually keep the old ones around for a couple months. just tucked in. I'm going to have to look that up and see if we can run that down, because somebody was asking about one just the other day. Yeah, Sam, I hear you there. He says, sadly, not much planned with diesel at $5 a gallon here in Rising. Yeah, we were at 4.79 today, Sam. I was out and about, headed over to Winco to pick up some groceries this afternoon, and unleaded was 4.11, and diesel was 4.79, somewhere in there. Oh, Tom Downey says, by the way, his charging problem is fixed. He got a new charger. Oh, interesting. Camp Gore 1, yes, yes, yes. Okay. I'll be right back to you, Ron. She says, it's been sitting for a long time. Okay. Bad gas probably has plugged up your carburetor. This is probably the most common problem. If it's been sitting for a long time with old gas, the gas gets all varnishy. It can varnish up the inside of the carburetor, which can plug up the jets. It can plug up the needle valve on the float and cause some issues. And so, yeah, first I would change my fuel filter. And if that doesn't do it, then you're probably going to have your carburetor overhauled or have somebody look at it. And but yeah, that can cause a problem for sure. And it will cause them to not start. Good night, Sam. Thank you. Eric Meyer says diesel is $5.39 in the San Joaquin Valley. Gary Sharp, good night. Freezing in Texas tonight again. Okay, thanks, Gary. And Gary D, Ultimate Campground is the app. Okay, great. All right, with that, I think we'll call her. So nice to have everybody here. Thank you so much. Yes, Linda, to a certain extent you can use carburetor cleaner, but you really can't use carburetor cleaner if it's not running, because you can treat your gas with some fuel stabilizer. You can maybe use seafoam. It works really well for that kind of stuff to help clean up your fuel system. To really do the proper job, you need the engine running so that you can spray carburetor cleaner down the carburetor, which will help clean the jets. But that does not clean the interior, the inside of the carburetor. And you really need to have the vehicle running to use carburetor cleaner properly with the carburetor on the vehicle. So let's see here. Thanks, Sam. Good night. Did you see my tow rig? Tom, did you send me something that I missed? Yes, fuel filter, then carb, Linda. Holy. Prices of Garmin $8.90 on Amazon. Yeah, I imagine they're expensive. Chris Hauser says it's $4.79 in Tarpon Springs. That's what our diesel is here, Chris. Yes, Linda, that's a good thing to do too, is to get rid of the old gas. But actually, if you just get some of the Sta-Bil gas stabilizer and treat the existing gas, you'll be all right. And try to put fresh gas in with it. But yeah, if you've varnished up the carburetor, that can cause trouble for sure. Good night, Gary. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you real soon. Tom, did you just send it? It hasn't popped in. I haven't seen a new email here for a while. Let me just do a quick update here in case it, it's just, I'm sure it'll pop up here in a minute. That was an email to a different account. But I'll keep an eye out for it. Judy Kimbrough says, good luck trying to find someone to rebuild a carb. Yeah, I've done hundreds of them myself, but I'm also 1,000 miles away. Yes, siphon the old out, put a new fuel filter in, change it. Yep. But that, again, might only help partially. Um, you know, but yeah, if it's, if you get lucky and it's your fuel filter, then, it's a bing, bang, boom, easy change and you're up and running. Camp Girl 1, she says she has Stay-Bill. Okay, good. Go treat that gas and then try to put a 5-gallon can of new gas in it. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to siphon the old gas out. How old is it? I don't want to get too in the weeds because it's already 8:30. I want to wrap this up. Okay, great. Yeah, she says she's met a mechanic and that'll help her in Goodyear. He's been a gem. Awesome. Eric Meyer says, for a carb rebuild, look under a shade tree in Alabama. Oh, Tom Downey, you sent an email a week ago? No way. I've got some here from Two Feathers, Tim Myers. I don't see anything, Tom. Does it come with your name on it, or do you have kind of like a vanity name? Because I sure would have responded to it. If you sent me an email and I didn't respond to it, then I didn't get it for some reason. You might need to resend that. trbowlin, BOWLIN @gmail.com. All right, we're going to call this one good. It's been an amazing night. We're already an hour and a half and change into this, and time just flew by. It's so nice having everybody here. I look forward to having you all back next week. Be sure and give me that thumbs up if you can. Subscribe. Do all that stuff. And until next week, good night. We'll see you soon. Peace out.